see what are life processes. We'll see what is nutrition, respiration, transportation and excretion. So these are all the various activities which are performed by the human beings. Living beings. The living beings perform various activities like ability to move, to reproduce, to produce offsprings, to respond and react to various environmental changes, and to get rid of the waste and so on. So these are all the activities which are performed, and these activities are nothing but these are the life processes. So basically, where do we get the energy for doing all these activities? We get the energy from the nutrients that we take. So basically, the process of taking in the nutrients is called as nutrition, and our first topic is nothing but it is the nutrition. So let us see nutrition in details. Nutrition is nothing but it is the taking in of the nutrients or the food materials, and out of that extracting the useful materials which will be helping in giving you the energy, building your various body parts, and helping in maintaining your body balance or regulating the activities that you do regularly. Now these based on the type of the nutrients, the nutrients are classified into three types. The energy giving nutrients, these are the nutrients like carbohydrates and the fats. The energy giving nutrients like the carbohydrates and the fats are giving you energy. Like suppose you're not keeping well, or you're feeling tired or exhausted. What you do is you will take Glucon-D. Glucon-D contains glucose, so this indicates that glucose or the carbohydrates are the major source of energy. Also, there are fats and carbohydrates which are stored in your liver, and these are helpful in producing the energy when you don't eat anything. Sometimes it happens that you have a hectic day and you are not able to eat anything. So what happens is your body will recover the stored food, and it will utilize the stored food which is there in the liver, and again it will give you energy to perform your daily activity. It doesn't happen that if you have not eaten anything, that means that day itself your body will be completely exhausted or you will die. It will not be like that. The stored energy, stored food is there, it is converted into energy to perform your activities. So this is what is energy giving nutrients. The next is the bodybuilding nutrients like the proteins. Now the bodybuilding nutrients are nothing but they are making your body, or proteins are also called as the building blocks of your body. Why they are called as building blocks? Because the proteins are there, they will form the various structures. Like proteins are there in your hair, also in your skin, they are present in the on the cell membrane, they form the various parts of your various organs also. So these are all the proteins which are building blocks, they are building your body. Also there are proteins which are functional proteins like hormones, enzymes. These are all the functional proteins which are present in your body. So that is why proteins are called as the building blocks of your body. Then the next nutrient is protecting and regulating nutrients. Now in that we have the various nutrients like the vitamins and the minerals. Now vitamins, these has to be present in a particular amount only. You can't take lot of vitamins or you can't take less vitamins, because extra vitamins will have diseases for hyperdose, and less, that is the deficiency of vitamins for certain amount, will again produce certain diseases. Now, and minerals, if you see, there are various minerals like potassium, there are calcium, there is iron. These are all the minerals. Even water is considered as one of the mineral, and these are all the minerals which are required in your body in a proper proportion. If that is not available, then what will happen is your body will not function properly. So these are all the protecting and regulating nutrients, like they protect your body and they also regulate the functions of your body. This way, these are all the nutrients. Based on the origin, they are also divided as the inorganic or organic types of nutrients, and the inorganic nutrients are mostly taken up by the plants, whereas the organic nutrients are taken up by the by the human beings. Now the nutrition, as we can see, based on the type of nutrition, they are divided into two types: autotrophic nutrition and heterotrophic nutrition. Now autotrophic nutrition is nothing but it is making your own food. Plants make their own food. That means plants, what they do is they take up the nutrients from the soil and the water, and they do photosynthesis and make their own food. Of course, we don't make our own food. Like, don't imagine that I cook my own food, so you are making your own food. It is not like that. You are taking the food which is made by plants and you are cooking it. So you are actually making it in the eatable form. It is not that you are making your own food. The heterotrophic nutrition is nothing but it is taking the plant source as a nutrient and converting it into the eatable form. That is depending on others for the food. We depend on plants. If plants are not there, we will not have our own food. So that is called as heterotrophic nutrition. In that also we have various types, like there are fungi and algae which depend on the dead and decaying organisms. So they are also called as parasites. Then there are organisms which take the whole food, like the human beings. They take the whole food and then convert it into the digestible form and then convert it into the energy. So there are other organisms also, like the cuscuta, ticks and lice. They invade the host and then they produce their own nutrition. So this way we have the different types of nutrients and as well as the different types of nutrition. Let's see the human digestive system. In that, the first organ is mouth. Then we have esophagus, that is the food pipe. Then it enters into the stomach. After that we have small intestine. Although it is 5 to 6 meter long, it is called a small intestine because of the small diameter. Then we have large intestine, which is only 1 meter long, but the diameter is large, so it is called as the large intestine. Then we have rectum and then the anus. So we will see the buccal cavity first, that is the mouth. In the buccal cavity nearby there are glands like the salivary glands. Now these salivary glands will secrete saliva. Saliva, it has the salivary juices in which we have the digestive enzymes like salivary amylase. Now, as the food enters from the mouth into the esophagus, inside the esophagus there is a movement which is called as the peristaltic movement, which helps the movement of the food from the food pipe towards the stomach. Now, at the opening of the stomach, there are muscles which are called as the sphincter muscles. These sphincter muscles helps in opening of the stomach and allows the entry of the food in the stomach. Inside the main digestion takes place, and here we have certain elements like HCl which is produced. These hydrochloric acid and the mucus which is produced by the goblet cells of the stomach, they are helpful in protecting the stomach. The mucus helps in protecting the inner lining of the stomach, as well as HCl helps in preventing the growth of the bacteria. It creates acidic condition because of which the bacteria are not grown. Also, HCl is also helpful in the digestive process, where we will see it later on in the digestion. Then through the stomach, the food enters into the small intestine. Now in the small intestine, the maximum digestion takes place and the absorption also takes place. The absorption takes place because of the hair-like projections which are present on the wall of the small intestine, inner lining of the small intestine, and they are called as the villi. These villi are having large amount of blood capillaries, because of which the absorbed food is assimilated to various parts of your body. Then we have the large intestine. In large intestine, there are parts like ascending colon, transverse colon and descending colon. Ascending colon means it goes upwards, then transverse which is horizontal, descending colon, then we have the rectum, and the last part is the anus, which helps in throwing out the food out of your undigested food out of your body. Now this anus, it also has the same muscles which are also called as the sphincter muscles, which helps in opening with the because of the pressure. When the pressure is created, the contraction, the muscles relax and the waste is thrown out of your body. Now these are the various parts of the digestive system. We will see the function of each and every organ in details now. As we can see, in mouth we have the salivary glands. Salivary glands will be producing the salivary amylase. The salivary amylase will help in breaking down the starch which is there in the food. The food, it will be mechanically digested by the teeth. The dentation of the human being says that there are 36 teeth in the adult, including the wisdom tooth. Now these all teeth helps in the mechanical breakdown of the food. There are incisors which help in tearing of the food. Then there are canines which help in which help in breaking the food. And then we have the various teeth like premolars and molars, which help in making the bolus of the food. Then that bolus enters into the esophagus. Now already, as I have told you, the chemical digestion takes place with the help of the salivary amylase. The starch is broken down into maltose, and then later on it will be converted into glucose. Maltose is a disaccharide. Now from there, this bolus of the starch of the food is taken through the esophagus. There a peristaltic movement takes place. Now peristalsis is nothing but it is the alternate contraction and relaxation of the muscles. That is, the muscles contract and relax, which helps in taking the food down towards the stomach. Later on, there will be sphincter muscles which will be assisting in entry of the food into the stomach. When the food enters into the stomach, the HCl is produced along with the mucus. As I have told you, mucus is helping in protecting the inner lining of the stomach. What is the work of the HCl then? HCl, it produces the acidic condition which prevents the food from getting infected by bacteria, and then this HCl also helps in producing an acidic condition, as it is an acid, hydrochloric acid. It produces an acidic condition, and this helps in doing the activities of the enzymes like pepsin. Now this enzyme pepsin helps in breaking down the proteins. It requires acidic condition only, because of which the HCl which is produced is helping the pepsin in breaking the proteins. Now then the food enters into the small intestine. Now in the small intestine, we also have the accessory glands. I have not told you before. The accessory glands like the liver and the pancreas. Liver helps in producing the bile juices, and the pancreas which is there, it produces the pancreatic juices. Now the bile juices which are produced by the liver, it helps in emulsification of the fats. What is emulsification? Emulsification is nothing but it is the loosening of the fat which is in the saturated form. This fat, which is converted into an emulsified form, is easy to break down and easy to digest. That's why the bile juice which is produced by the liver is very helpful in emulsification of the fats. Then later on, we also have the pancreas, which produces the pancreatic juices. As we have seen that HCl converts the food into the acidic form. Now there are various enzymes which require the alkaline condition, like the amylase. And now these amylase require alkaline condition, which is produced by the pancreatic juices. Pancreatic juices will give alkaline condition for certain enzymes to work in that particular condition. Now, inside the small intestine, almost all the food is digested. The various nutrients like the fats are converted into fatty acids and glycerol. Then the carbohydrates are converted into the smallest form, that is the glucose. Then we have the then the proteins are converted into amino acids, and so on. So this is the complete digestion which is taking place in the small intestine. Now, after the complete digestion in the small intestine, the absorption takes place in the small intestine, which is assisted by the villi. These are the finger-like projections in the inner lining of the small intestine. Now these finger-like projections have more of the blood capillaries, as you can see the picture. These blood capillaries will help in absorbing the nutrients, and since it is absorbed in the blood will take up the nutrient to various parts of your body. Now, after absorption, the food enters into the large intestine. In the large intestine, excess of the salts and water are completely absorbed, and the food becomes hard enough to move. Now, this food enters into the large intestine through the ascending and the transverse and descending colon. It comes to the rectum. From the rectum, it is stored there for a particular period of time. After that, when the rectum is completely full, a pressure is created, and because of that, the food leaves your body through the sphincter muscles. As I've already told you, sphincter muscles are muscles which work on the pressure basis. Like if there is the muscles are contracted, and otherwise if they are relaxed, the food will go out of your body. So this way, the process of digestion takes place in your body. majority of digestion takes place in the small intestine. The digestion of the various proteins takes place in the stomach, and the salivary amylase also helps in breaking down the starch in your buccal cavity. So these are all the steps which are there in the digestive system.
No more spending your energy and money on coaching classes, or missing classes for rain, for rally, and any other nonsense. Subjects covered by multiple teachers with repeat telecasts. Doubts, concepts, applications, no problem. All explained through great and significant animation. So sit back comfortably in your home and watch Study Spectrum TV channel.
Now let us see the nutrition in plants, that is a type of autotrophic nutrition. In plants, they also require the food to do certain activities. Like they also perform the transportation within the plants. They produce food also. They have certain excretory waste also. So these are all the processes which require energy, and plants require their energy using the inorganic nutrients which are present in the soil, as well as they produce their own food by the process called as photosynthesis. Now, photosynthesis is a process which has a particular chemical reaction. If I tell you 6CO2 plus 6H2O in presence of chlorophyll and sunlight will give you a glucose, that is C6H12O6, of course releasing oxygen and energy along with it. Now this is a photosynthetic process which takes in the carbon dioxide. It requires water, and it requires the sunlight, adequate sunlight, as well as the chlorophyll which is there. Green plants which are having the chlorophyll only, they do the photosynthetic process. There are also various pigments like the carotenoids and so on. These all pigments, they also help in the process of photosynthesis. If if green plants are not there and they are not having the chlorophyll pigments, there are other pigments like rhodopsin and carotenoids. These are present in the red or the other color plants, which also help in doing photosynthesis. Now let us see the process of photosynthesis. As we all know that the leaves are basically involved in the photosynthetic, because the lower surface of the leaf have the opening which are called as stomata. These openings are guided by the guard cells which are there. The guard cells helps in opening of the stomata, and inside the stomata the carbon dioxide enters. Now this carbon dioxide enters to the lower surface of the leaf, and then once the carbon dioxide enters into the leaf, there are chlorophyll pigments which are present in the palisade cells, the mesophyll cells, and the spongy cells as well. Now these carbon dioxide enters into the chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is in presence of sunlight. What it does is the sun energy is trapped. The radiant energy from the sun is trapped, and it is splitted somehow in the form of water and oxygen. This water is split up in the form of hydrogen and oxygen. So this splitting of the water takes place in the presence of the sunlight in the chlorophyll. So chlorophyll, sunlight, as well as the carbon dioxide is important. Now what happens is the water comes from the base level. That is, when we put water to the plants, we usually try that it reaches the soil, because the absorption of the water takes place in the roots, and through the roots it enters into the xylem vessels. Through the xylem vessels it reaches to the leaves. So we have small veins in the leaves, which are nothing but these are the xylem vessels or the xylem tubes, which helps in bringing the water towards the chlorophyll. Now the chlorophyll splits the water into hydrogen and oxygen, and then the carbon dioxide which is there, it enters into the chlorophyll, and the production of the glucose takes place. Now this glucose, which is also called as C6H12O6, the chemical formula, this glucose is stored in the food in the form of starch, and this is the food of the plants which is taken up. Now this food is transmitted through the phloem to the various parts of the plants, and it helps in the various processes like the production of the fruits or flowers to grow. These are all the processes which are there, and these food enters into the flower part to produce the nectar as well. In the flower we have nectar and all. So these are all this is nothing but it is the starch which is converted into the nectar. So we have the photosynthetic process which takes place in the leaf. Now the site for photosynthesis is all the green parts. Basically the leaves are the major sites of photosynthesis, as well as the stems and the other green parts or the floral parts like the sepals which are there at the base of the flower. They also help in doing the photosynthesis. So basically photosynthesis majorly takes place in the leaves, as we have the stomata which helps in taking in the carbon dioxide. Now this photosynthesis is not necessarily done in daytime, or for desert plants they take up the carbon dioxide in day, and they take up the carbon dioxide at night and do photosynthesis in daytime. So this is what is happening in the plants like the desert plants, which take up the carbon dioxide at night and produce the food in the daytime. Now the various raw materials which are required for the photosynthesis are nothing but the carbon dioxide, which is a major part which is required. Then we also have water which is required, and sunlight. So the raw materials like sunlight, carbon dioxide and water, all three are extremely important. There are various experiments which are performed to show that the sunlight is important for the photosynthesis, as well as there are experiments which prove that carbon dioxide is again an important element for the process of photosynthesis. Chlorophyll is an important element which breaks up the water into hydrogen and oxygen. So this is again an important element which is required for the photosynthesis. Various other pigments, like as I've told you, carotenoids and rhodopsin are also there. These are all the pigments except the chlorophyll pigment. They also perform photosynthesis in the absence of chlorophyll. Now these are all the sites, these are all the raw materials which are extremely important for photosynthesis. So basically we have seen the photosynthetic reaction, that is C6H12O6 is formed with the help of 6CO2, 6H2O in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll. The C6H12O6 is nothing but it is the glucose which is stored in the plants in the form of starch, and we take up that food as our food, and we are heterotrophs, so we are dependent on plants and we take up the plant source as a food material. Although plants are the autotrophs, they make their own food, taking up the nutrients like the water. They take up also nitrogen and phosphorus. These are also the important elements for the plants to grow. Now let us see another important life process, that is respiration. Respiration is the conversion of the food, the digested food, assimilated food into the energy, or release of energy through the assimilated food is called as respiration. Now respiration, there are again two types in respiration. There is external respiration, that is also called as breathing, which is done in the through the nostrils into the lungs, and the internal respiration, that is also called as the exchange of gases or diffusion, which takes place at the cellular level and in the mitochondria. So respiration is of two types: external respiration, the inhalation or exhalation. What is inhalation? That is the taking in the air is called as inhalation. In that we have large amount of oxygen. And then exhalation is removal of the air which is containing more amount of carbon dioxide. So this is inhalation and exhalation, which is also called as external respiration, because it is taking place externally and not at the cellular level. Now the next is the internal respiration or the cellular respiration. The internal respiration is taking place at the cellular level, wherein the mitochondria convert the oxygen into the ATP. It uses the oxygen and it helps in production of ATP using that oxygen. So this is done at the cellular level, and that's why it is called as the cellular respiration or internal respiration. Now we have the various respirations, like we have respiration in animals. In animals also we have various types of animals, like the various organs which are used by various other types of animals is different. For example, if you take earthworm respire through skin. the diffusion of the gases takes place at the surface of the skin. So the organ for respiration in case of earthworm is nothing but it is the skin. If you take the organisms like the aquatic organisms, these have the gills which helps in the exchange of the gases, and these gills helps in the respiration. Now in case of terrestrial organisms like the human beings, we have lungs as a respiratory organ, and the main respiration takes place in the lungs, that is the internal respiration takes place in the lungs. So if we see the respiratory system of the human beings in details, the various organs involved in the respiration are: first is the nostril, that is the nose, then it goes to the pharynx and into the larynx. Now as I've told you that this larynx is nothing but it is the windpipe. Through it, it enters into the trachea and then into the bronchi. From the bronchi, it goes to the bronchioles. Bronchioles are nothing but these are the branches of the bronchi. And then at the base of the bronchioles, we have the alveoli. Alveoli is nothing but these are called as the basic unit of the lungs, or they are also called the cells of the lungs. These alveoli are nothing but they are the bag-like, sac-like structures which helps in taking in the air, and the exchange of the gases or the diffusion takes place at the alveolar level. Now at the alveolar level, there are blood capillaries which are connected to the alveoli, and the oxygenated, the carbon dioxide which is there, it goes into the alveoli and through the nostrils goes out. Then same way the air which when we inhale, it enters into the lungs, and then the exchange of gases again takes place. The carbon dioxide which is there, it is given out, and the oxygen is taken in. Now this oxygen which is taken in is given into the blood, which is also called as the oxygenated blood. Now as you can see, circulation, it is a process in which the blood is converted into two forms. One is the oxygenated and the other is the deoxygenated. So basically heart pumps the oxygenated blood towards the various organs, and deoxygenated blood towards the lungs for purification. Now what happens is this deoxygenated blood enters into the lungs through the pulmonary artery, and then this there at the lungs level, at the cellular level, the exchange of gases takes place. The oxygen is taken in and the carbon dioxide is given out. Now this carbon dioxide goes out, and the oxygen which is taken in comes into the heart again. When it enters into the heart, once it comes into the heart, it has become oxygenated now. The oxygenated blood then goes to other parts, and this oxygen is used up by various parts for the production of ATP. Like we have the various organs which perform certain functions, and this is done only in the presence of ATP. ATP is nothing but it is adenosine triphosphate. Adenosine triphosphate, it is also called as the energy currency. Like if I want to purchase anything, I want to purchase a mobile or anything, marker. So what happens is we need to spend money for taking it. No one will give you free of cost. So we need to spend the money or the currency for it. Similarly, when we have to do certain amount of work, whatever it is, moving from here to there, talking or writing or running, whatever it is, the functions are performed only when we spend a certain amount of energy, that we spend ATP. This ATP is produced in the mitochondria, and this production of ATP at the mitochondrial level, it is also called as internal respiration or cellular respiration. Now this ATP is that is why it is called as the energy currency. As we have currency, money, rupee, so similarly we have the energy currency that in our body, that is called as the ATP. So these are all the organs which are there, which helps in the exchange of gases or taking in and giving out the oxygen. Now how the process of respiration takes place? The diaphragm which is there at below the lungs, it helps in the inhalation and exhalation of the air. Now during inhalation, what happens is the diaphragm contracts, and it helps in giving out enough of space for the lungs to expand. This expansion of the lungs reduces the air pressure inside the lungs, which helps in taking in the oxygen, taking in the air inside. Now during exhalation, what happens is the diaphragm contracts and diaphragm relaxes, and the lungs become small. Lungs become to their original size. and then what happens is the air which is there is given out because of the air pressure created into the lungs, and it is given out through your nostrils. So this way inhalation and exhalation is aided by the diaphragm which is there below the lungs in your body. Now let us see the exchange of gases in plants. As plants are stationary, they do not require the respiration in that much amount like us, like human beings. Now the respiratory organs for the plants are not specific. Like we have the respiratory tract itself, like we have lungs and the nostrils, from starting from the nose to the lungs. These are all the respiratory organs which are there. Plants do not have the respiratory organs. The organs like the leaf, the stem and the leaves, they perform the respiration, that is exchange of gases. Now in daytime what happens is the carbon dioxide which is given out, it helps in respiration, and the respiration and photosynthesis takes place simultaneously. But at night what happens is, when there is more carbon dioxide, the respiration takes place and photosynthesis does not take place at all, releasing more amount of carbon dioxide at night. So this is what is the respiration in plants which takes place, and there is no specific organ for plants for respiration. Now we have the various the chemical reactions for respirations. There are various types of respirations: anaerobic respiration and aerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration is done in the presence of oxygen, and anaerobic respiration is again of two types. One is in lack of oxygen, that is less oxygen, and one is in the absence of oxygen. So we have two types of anaerobic respiration, and aerobic respiration is in the presence of oxygen. The basic biochemical reaction is the same for all the organisms. That is the conversion of the energy into the conversion of the glucose into the 3-chemical compound, that is pyruvate. Now this process is called as glycolysis, that is breaking down the glucose into pyruvate. Pyruvate is the 3 carbon compound, and glucose is the 6 carbon compound. As the names as the formula C6H12O6, we have 6 carbons. It is converted into pyruvate, that is the 3 carbon compound. Now this pyruvate is this reaction is same for all, but once it forms the pyruvate, the next step which is there, it is different for the different organisms. Like in the absence of oxygen, what happens is the ethanol and carbon dioxide along with the energy is produced. This is in the absence of oxygen, so it is called as the anaerobic respiration. In the lack of oxygen, what happens in human muscles when we are running, we are doing excessive exercises, heavy exercises. What happens is the energy requirement or the requirement of the oxygen is more in that case, and the oxygen is less. If the oxygen is less and no more oxygen is supplied to the muscles, then the muscles will do anaerobic respiration, that is it will produce lactic acid along with energy. To produce energy, it will form the lactic acid. Because of the deposition of the lactic acid into the muscles, we get cramps in the area where when we do heavy exercises or when our muscles contract a lot. So this is the respiration which is taking place in the lack of oxygen. When oxygen is not more, when proper oxygen is not supplied to the muscles, then what happens is this glucose, the pyruvate, is converted into lactic acid and it gets deposited into your muscles. Then in the presence of oxygen, what happens is in the mitochondria, the pyruvate is converted into carbon dioxide and water, and energy is released. So this carbon dioxide is again thrown out through your respiratory tract, and that is what is the exhalation which we do in the process of respiration. So three main types you have seen. In the absence of oxygen, it produces ethanol and carbon dioxide along with energy. In the lack of oxygen, it produces lactic acid. Where heavy exercises are done, the oxygen becomes less, and that's why the muscles produce lactic acid and energy is produced. Then in the presence of oxygen, we produce carbon dioxide and water, as well as the energy is produced. So these are the three different types of reactions in three different conditions in the respiration.